I never thought my life would turn out like this. I used to believe that if you worked hard, loved your family, and stayed loyal, things would fall into place. That's what my dad always said growing up in rural Pennsylvania. Son, don't worry about what you can't control. Just take care of your own. I carried that with me into adulthood like a damn mantra. So that's what I did. I married the girl I fell in love with, Melissa. Sweet, smart, the kind of woman who could silence a room just by walking in. We met in college, and while I was busting my back working nights at a warehouse and cramming in classes during the day, she was pulling straight A's like it was nothing. We got married 3 years after graduation. She became a nurse. I landed a steady job in logistics. We bought a modest house in the suburbs of Allentown. Nothing flashy, but it was ours. We were partners. Or so I thought. Looking back, I see the cracks. They were there. I just didn't want to look too closely. I chalked up the little things to stress. Melissa working longer hours. Her phone always on silent. Her being distant. Not cold exactly, just not quite there. It's hard to explain unless you've felt it, the way someone can be in the same room, but completely gone. Then came the money problems. COVID hit us like a freight train. My hours got cut, and with them, our income. Melissa picked up extra shifts, and we scraped by. But bills kept coming. Credit card balances grew like weeds. I took a second job driving deliveries at night. I'd come home past midnight, exhausted, grab 4 hours of sleep, and do it all again. I remember the night it started. Not the affair, I didn't know about that yet, but the unraveling. It was a Wednesday. I'd come home from a double shift, drenched from the rain, only to find the house quiet. Too quiet. Melissa wasn't on the couch watching her crime shows. No candle scent in the air. Just silence. I walked into the kitchen and saw her phone buzzing on the counter. That's what did it. That stupid buzzing phone. I would have ignored it. Swear I would have. But something about the way it was turned face down, vibrating like it was hiding something, it gnawed at me. I flipped it over. A name I didn't recognize. Travis. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But I did. I unlocked it. Same passcode for the last 5 years, our anniversary date, and there it was. A flood of texts. Some recent. Some weeks old. Nothing graphic, but the tone, the intimacy. Things she hadn't said to me in months. I'm so tired of pretending. He's working late again. You're the only thing that makes me feel alive. My stomach turned. I scrolled further. Photos. One of them together, his arm around her waist at what looked like a hotel bar. Another of just him, shirtless, grinning. Nothing explicit, but suggestive enough. I dropped the phone like it burned me. I sat down on the kitchen floor and just stared at the fridge. It hummed quietly, oblivious. I must have been there a while, because the door creaked open behind me and Melissa walked in, soaked from the rain, setting her purse down like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word. Not yet. She looked at me, half smiled. You okay? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask who the hell Travis was. I wanted to throw her phone across the room. But instead, I just nodded. Long day, I muttered. She gave me this sad little nod, as if she was the one who had been hurt. Then she went upstairs, said she was going to shower. I stayed on the floor, letting the silence swallow me. Because in that moment, I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't just some emotional lapse. This wasn't her texting an old flame out of boredom. She was in deep. And I had no idea how far it went. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, woke up, worked, came home. Melissa acted like everything was normal. She still made coffee in the mornings. Still folded my laundry. still kissed me goodbye. But now, every touch felt fake. Like I was being handled, not loved. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to know more. Maybe that sounds cowardly. Maybe it was. But after nearly 10 years of marriage, I couldn't bring myself to throw it all away on a half-truth. I wanted the full picture. I needed to be sure. So I started watching. I paid attention to her phone habits. She never left it unattended again. Started keeping it in her pocket, even in the house. She started locking the bathroom door, even just to brush her teeth. She changed her passcode. That one cut deep. I checked our bank account. That's when I found it, multiple withdrawals. $200 here, $300 there. Always in cash. Spread out over weeks. Not outrageous amounts, but enough to raise suspicion. She wasn't a spender. Never had been. And yet our savings were thinning out like tissue paper. One night I followed her. I told her I had a late delivery shift and left the house around 8. Parked down the block, lights off. I waited. Around 9:15, Melissa walked out, dressed nicer than usual. Not sexy, just sharp. Like someone trying to impress, but not be obvious about it. She got in her car and drove off. I tailed her. She drove across town to a motel. One of those grimy-looking places with flickering neon signs and rooms you can rent by the hour. She pulled into the lot, parked, and a man walked up to her car. Tall. Bearded. Tan jacket. Travis. They talked for a second. Then she got out and followed him inside. I sat there for a long time, engine idling, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I saw. That maybe he was a friend. Maybe she was helping him. Maybe God, maybe anything else. But deep down I knew. And that's when the rage started to build. Slow at first. Like a storm creeping in from the horizon. I wasn't angry just because she cheated. I was angry because she let me drown. Let me kill myself working 2 jobs. Let me rot in guilt over our finances, while she was spending our money and her time on him. When she got home a little after midnight, I was already in bed, pretending to sleep. She showered, slipped in next to me, and whispered, "You're working too hard, babe." I almost laughed. That night I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about every memory we'd built. Our wedding, our honeymoon in Maine, the night she cried when we adopted our dog Max, and how hollow it all felt now. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not even my brother, who I usually confided in about everything. I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I wanted truth. And a plan. Because revenge, when it finally came, wasn't going to be loud or reckless. It was going to be surgical. I started keeping a journal. Not because I'm that kind of guy, but because I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Writing things down made them feel real. Made me feel real. Each page was filled with questions, observations, timelines. I started documenting everything. The late-night outings. The subtle changes in her behavior. The withdrawals from our account. And then something new showed up, an envelope. It came in the mail one Thursday afternoon while I was home early. Melissa was working a double, so I checked the mail myself. The envelope was plain, no return address. But it was thick. I opened it and froze. Inside were photos. Melissa and Travis. Some outside the motel. Some of them eating dinner. One, God help me, of them kissing in his car. Her hand on his cheek, like it used to be on mine. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. No note. No explanation. Just cold, hard proof. Someone knew. And they wanted me to know. At first, I thought it was a warning. Then I realized it was a message. Someone else knew about them, and for reasons I didn't understand yet, they wanted me to have that knowledge. I hid the envelope in the garage behind my old tool chest. That weekend, Melissa suggested we go visit her parents. Said it had been too long. I stared at her, wondering how she could smile at me with that same mouth she used to whisper to him. "I've got a lot of work stuff," I lied. "You go ahead." She seemed relieved. That told me everything. While she was gone, I did something I'm not proud of. I went through her email. It didn't take long to find it. She had a separate account. One she clearly thought I'd never find. But she'd saved the login info on our shared laptop. The inbox was a trail of ashes. Most of the emails were deleted, but I found a few threads. She and Travis had been talking for almost 7 months. What started as venting about stress and money turned into something else. Something intimate. He talked about saving her. About starting over. About how a man like me doesn't deserve her. They'd even discussed me. He called me weak. Said I was a dead weight. Melissa didn't argue. She agreed. That's when something inside me cracked. She didn't just cheat. She despised me. She pitied me. And worst of all, she felt justified. I couldn't let that stand. So I made a call. An old friend of mine, Jacob, used to do some freelance work in private investigations before he settled down. We hadn't talked in years, but when I explained my situation, he agreed to meet. We sat in his garage, a couple of beers between us, and I showed him the envelope, the photos, the email threads. He looked through everything and nodded slowly. "You want to blow this up or bury it?" I thought about that for a long time. "I want her to feel what I felt," I said. "Not for a moment. For a lifetime." He didn't say much after that. Just nodded and said, "All right. Then let's get to work." Because now it wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about justice. And I was done waiting in the dark. Jacob worked fast. Within a week, he handed me a full report, names, dates, phone records, even financial transactions tied to a hidden Venmo account. Travis wasn't just some stranger. He was a contractor who worked part-time for a private medical transport company, one that Melissa sometimes coordinated with at the hospital. That's how they met. But there was more. Travis had a record. Not prison time, but close. Fraud, identity manipulation, a few flag complaints that never made it to formal charges. He was slick, practiced. The kind of guy who could charm his way into anything and leave just before the consequences caught up. And Melissa? She wasn't just sleeping with him. She was funding him. Jacob traced several of those cash withdrawals directly to a prepaid debit card under Travis's name. He'd been using our money to pay off his debts, buy supplies, even finance a trip to Florida, alone. No sign Melissa went with him. That was the twist that hit hardest. For all her talk of leaving me, she wasn't even his priority. She was just his bankroll. I wanted to rage, to scream. But instead, I took a walk. I ended up at the park where Melissa and I used to go when we were first dating. I sat on the same bench where she once told me she wanted to grow old with me. And I cried. Not out of weakness. Out of grief. Grief for the man I used to be. Grief for the life I thought I was building. And grief for the version of Melissa that no longer existed. That night, Jacob called. "You ready to hit back?" he asked. I was. But not the way he expected. I didn't want to just expose her. That was too easy. I wanted to make sure she knew what it felt like to live in uncertainty, to be played, to question her own reality. So I started the game. I became attentive again. Sweet even. I took her out to dinner. Bought flowers. Asked about her day. And I could see it in her eyes. Confusion. Guilt. A crack in her perfect mask. She started second-guessing herself. Started watching me the way I used to watch her. I changed my phone passcode, stayed out late without explaining, left receipts in my jacket pockets from places I hadn't been. I was manufacturing doubt. And it was working. One night she asked, "Is everything okay between us?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I'm happy, babe. Are you?" She didn't answer. That weekend, she didn't go to see Travis. She stayed home, glued to her phone, quiet. She glanced at me, like she wanted to ask something but couldn't find the words. And for the first time in months, I slept peacefully. Not because I was over it, but because I was in control. And the next phase of my plan? That was going to hurt. By now, Melissa was unraveling. The confidence she once wore like armor was slipping. I could see it in the way she stared at me over dinner, like she was waiting for a bomb to go off. Like she knew something was coming, but couldn't figure out from where. She started asking questions, quietly, almost like she was afraid of the answers. "Is there someone else?" I nearly laughed. The irony was suffocating. I looked at her with a calm I didn't feel and said, "No, of course not." But I let the silence afterward stretch just long enough to plant doubt. And it worked. That weekend, I planted a seed. While she was in the shower, I took her phone and used a dummy account Jacob had helped me create. I sent a single message from a fake contact. "Does he know yet?" Then I deleted the text, but left the sent notification visible on her lock screen. That night, I watched her from across the living room as she stared at her phone, scrolling back and forth, checking and rechecking. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled. She was crumbling. The next morning, she didn't speak a word to me. Just went through the motions, kissed me goodbye, and left for work. I waited until she was gone, then pulled out the envelope, the one with the photos, and added a few new pieces to it. Bank statements, screenshots, a printout of the Venmo history. Everything Jacob had dug up, neatly labeled. Then I sealed the envelope again, and I mailed it to her parents. They were good people. Her mom used to call me the son she never had. I knew they'd ask questions, and I knew Melissa wouldn't be able to lie to them the way she lied to me. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more piece to the puzzle, Travis. Jacob had been tracking him for weeks, and we'd built a profile, where he worked, who he owed money to, what he was hiding from. And it turned out, Travis had a weakness, greed. So I set a trap. I created a fake online identity, posed as a local investor. Sent Travis a message about a business opportunity, one that promised a quick payout for minimal effort. We exchanged a few emails. He bit quickly. Then, using another fake account, I sent him this. "Melissa told me everything. I want in. But if you screw me, I'll bury you." He never replied. But the next day, Melissa came home early from work. Pale. Eyes red. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "We need to talk," she said. I nodded, calm as ever. "Sure. Let's." But before she could speak, I stood up, picked up my keys, and said, "Actually, I've got somewhere to be. We'll talk later." Then I left her standing there, broken and speechless, as I walked out the door. Because now, she wasn't just wondering if I knew. She knew I knew. And that was the beginning of the end. By Monday morning, the fallout had begun. Melissa's mother called me first. Her voice shook, barely above a whisper. "Tell me it isn't true." I didn't respond right away. I just said, "Check your mailbox." Then I hung up. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was tired of words. Tired of explanations. Let the evidence speak. Let the people who thought they knew her see the version of her she tried so hard to hide. Later that day, Melissa's sister texted me, "Whatever's going on, I'm here if you need to talk." But I didn't reply. Not yet. There was still work to do. When I got home, Melissa was sitting on the couch, hunched over like a statue. She looked up at me with eyes rimmed red, face blotchy. She had the envelope in her lap. She must have retrieved it from her parents, or maybe they'd mailed it back. Either way, she knew now that everyone knew. "How could you?" she asked. I tilted my head. "How could I?" That's when the mask cracked. The tears came, fast and messy. She sobbed like a child, like someone who'd lost something they didn't even know how to name. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." I sat down across from her. Calm. Measured. "You lied to me for almost a year. You used our money to support a man who saw you as a meal ticket. And when I was killing myself trying to keep us afloat, you were giving him the life I was working for." She didn't argue. Couldn't. "I thought you'd leave me," she said finally. "I didn't think you'd destroy everything." I leaned forward. "No. You destroyed everything. I just made sure the wreckage had your name on it." She flinched. Not from fear, shame. That night, she slept in the guest room. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I filed for separation. Quietly. Efficiently. I had documentation of financial infidelity, which Jacob helped compile into a legal folder. The lawyer said it gave me strong grounds to protect most of our assets, especially the house. And the house mattered. Because Melissa loved it. Loved the kitchen she picked out. The garden she planted. The sunroom where she curled up with coffee. And now, she was losing it. 1 week later, she moved out. No fight. No screaming match. Just silence. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She didn't beg me to change my mind. She knew better. But Travis? He didn't stay quiet. I got a call one evening, an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "You think you're clever?" His voice was low, simmering. "No," I said. "I know I am. You ruined her life." I chuckled. "No. She ruined mine. I just returned the favor." And I hung up. I didn't hear from him again. But the final act was still to come. Because revenge isn't just about breaking someone down. It's about walking away whole, while they watch. It's strange how quiet life becomes after a storm. The chaos, the tension, the sleepless nights, eventually they fade. But the silence that follows? That's where the real weight sits. Heavy. Unforgiving. And somehow peaceful. Melissa was gone. Officially. She moved into a small apartment across town, one of those barely furnished places with flickering lights and thin walls. I knew because Jacob checked. Not to spy, but to confirm the last piece of the plan had landed. She'd lost the house. Lost her parents' trust. Her sister barely spoke to her. And Travis? He ghosted her. Turns out, once the money stopped, so did the love. Jacob sent me a screenshot. Travis had moved on. Another woman. Same pattern. Probably feeding her the same lines he used on Melissa. And Melissa? She sent one letter. Not a text. Not a call. A handwritten note, folded neatly, and left in my mailbox. I understand now. You never raised your voice. You never hit back. You just let me collapse. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't. But I needed to say this. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I didn't reply. What would I even say? I carried that letter with me for a week, tucked in my jacket pocket, reading it at traffic lights, during lunch breaks, before bed. Not because I needed closure, but because I wanted to remember. I wanted to remember how far I'd come. Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes, it's the slow, cold realization that the person who hurt you no longer has power over you. that you've taken back your name, your pride, your peace. 1 month after she left, I changed the locks, painted the house, bought a new bed. And one Saturday morning, I stood in the backyard, coffee in hand, sunlight warming my face, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was free. And that was the harshest revenge of all. Because she would carry the weight of her choices for the rest of her life. While I let it go.